I want you to tell us if there was a specific moment where you realized, or what the specific moment was where you realized, I need to make this film, I need to make Earthlings.
Well, I think it's remarkable. I mean, truly extraordinary. But most people really don't think that where their food comes from is any kind of a horror show. They just don't think it is. From little kids growing up, the way it's presented. So that's why it's so shocking to everybody. When you see slaughterhouse footage or factory farm footage, you're just like aghast at it. And we say in the film Earthlings that when people wince at the suffering of animals, that feeling speaks well of us. So we're not totally callous yet. We haven't completely, we're still disturbed by it, which tells us something. So like anybody, I was raised on a standard Western diet, and I saw some documentary footage of pigs being slaughtered. And as someone who grew up eating animal products and had bacon for breakfast, like many, just the standard Western diet, and never thought much of it, I was horrified to see animals suffering. So that's that rabbit hole that it starts you on. It shouldn't be a rabbit hole of any kind. So yeah, I saw footage, and it started the beginning of a personal transformation. I also was dating, I had a girlfriend at the time, I was in my 20s, and she was vegetarian. And she was a really good cook. So we started dating, and I thought, well, I guess I'm vegetarian and it was delicious and it was easy. But still, there was so many animal products still coming in daily in a way. And so then I saw that footage shortly thereafter, and I was and boy, did that open a door for me. Yeah, that's how it started.
Where was the footage from? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was a documentary, oddly, in the 90s. There was a documentary. It's such a strange, some bridges are so curious how this leads to that, stepping stones. It was a documentary about the making of a film, because I've always been interested in filmmaking, and it was a documentary about the making of a film called Apocalypse Now, which is a Vietnam film from the 70s. It's quite well known. Yeah. And it's directed by Francis Ford Coppola, and the documentary was directed by his wife, Eleanor, and she was filming her husband making this film in the jungle for so long. It was quite a grueling film. And so she filmed this documentary, and that documentary was later released. It's called Hearts of Darkness, and it was about the making of that film. Now, the end of Apocalypse Now, the movie concludes with the death of Marlon Brando, who's the villain, who's the ultimate villain, who you don't really see until the third act. And all you hear about through Act 1 and Act 2 is this Colonel Kurtz, and they go upriver to get this guy, and finally it's Marlon Brando, this legendary actor, and this assassin has come to kill him. And in the movie, in Apocalypse Now, when the assassin kills Brando's character, it's intercut with a tribal sequence of the hacking of a caribou by a tribe in the jungle. And they actually kill the caribou on film, because prior to the mid to late 70s, you'd have to check the date, but in America, the Humane Society was not yet monitoring animal cruelty in films. Nowadays, you watch films, and almost all films will end with a logo that says, no, all animal action was monitored in this film, so the Humane Society is involved. But they used to kill animals on film. Well, horses would die if there was hunting things. They shoot animals, and in the case of Apocalypse Now, they kill this with machetes. They hack this caribou to death right there on camera, and it's intercut with the slaughter. So it's the slaughter of this beast and the slaughter of this beast, and that's in the movie. Well, the documentary, Eleanor, his wife, shows how the inspiration for that scene came about, and they filmed a tribe in a jungle torturing pigs and then killing them. And there was something about, it's been a long time since I've seen it, but what was weird about it was that it wasn't quick, and that the pigs were dying slowly. And to just see an animal suffer and die slowly, it was so disturbing. And I thought, and even though this was a film about a film, a documentary about a film, I started researching just factory farming in general, and it wasn't the same, but it wasn't a far cry from that. It was pretty awful in a different way. Yeah. And so, yeah, it just set me on a path. It really set me on a path. I mean, when they say when you unlock something, and I guess you could say it created a monster in a way, because I went all the way with it, and then it was time to expose it. You know.
What a way to come across that. It reminds me of nothing at all similar, but of an equally interesting story. I had a friend who's an activist and a vegan and an activist. I asked him, what's your story? He said he was on a train home after a night out and just found a flyer, read the flyer. It was about factory farming. That was it.
Amazing.
Unbelievable. And he's an activist, and he's gone on to, not in the same way as you, but he's going out, speaking up, making a difference from a flyer. And for you, it was a documentary about a film.
Something else.
What an interesting.
Well, these are the stepping stones. They're like lily pads. We kind of leapfrogged, to use an animal metaphor, but.
That's a good one, though, no?
Yeah, it's an okay one. It's an okay one. It's positive.
It's a nice one.
It's positive. Yeah, you make me think about something, just because I know I have friends and family and business associates who are kind people, and they don't make this connection. And I'm sure you do too. And
yeah, of course.
You kind of float some things out, and you kind of mention, and it doesn't land the same way. So your friend who came across a flyer randomly, I mean, the chance that coming home late one night somewhere to see it, to find it, and to have it resonate. So I always say, I have this thing I say, I may have said it to you before, but that we're gardeners. We're all gardeners, and we're casting seeds. And we always have to be casting seeds, and sometimes those seeds will be cast on stony ground, and sometimes they'll land in rich, fertile soil, but we don't know, and we just keep casting those seeds. And we don't get to find out often who or where, and nor should we care, because who cares,
Earthlings, it connected with a lot of people. It was a cultural moment, and you can't do that unless you have some kind of vision of, some intuition on how people are going to perceive this and how they're going to react, and what are they going to like and what are they not going to like, and what's going to move them to make decisions in their own life. And it appears that you were very successful with that film, because it had a monstrous cultural impact. I mean, so many people changed their lives, right?
Who knew?
Did you know while you were making it?
No. Sometimes you can get a sense like, I think this might work.
Yeah.
I'm sure musicians sometimes might go, oh, this might be a hit. Maybe filmmakers do, oh, this could be a hit. Not in the case of assembling the film. But I remember Joaquin and I had talked maybe even a year or two after the film had come out, and we were both sort of surprised that it, because it's such a horror show,
right.
Which was very encouraging that it would communicate to people, that they would say, they would even bother. And I don't know if I told you this story, but I was trying to get distribution for it originally,
right.
And HBO was interested at one point. Here, HBO, the whole box office was interested, and I had a meeting in New York with them, with the director of documentary programming at the time. This is 20 years ago, or even more, because it came out in 2005. So this was just before maybe 2004. And then I ended up meeting with their head of West Coast acquisitions here in Los Angeles. He passed on the film. It was just odd because he asked to meet me in person. We had a lunch, and he wanted to take me to lunch. And I thought, oh, guy from West Coast Acquisitions from HBO wants to take me to lunch. This is a good sign. And he said, we're not going to take your film. And I thought, why did this guy want to meet me in person to say no? And he was a large man. I'll just say, let me just say this as charitably as I can. He had more non-muscle weight on his body. Let's just put it that way. That's as diplomatic as I can say it.
Yeah.
And he ordered a chicken lunch or something with me, and so he was eating, this. I'm eating this salad, and he said, we're not going to take your film. And I said, okay, why? And he goes, well, we feel it's a propaganda film. And this kind of irked me just a little bit, because I know what a propaganda film is. And I said, what makes you say that? And he goes, you offer no opposing viewpoints in your film. And I said to him, I go, shouldn't the film be infused with the filmmaker's point of view? Shouldn't a film take a stand, much the way a book might take a stand? In fact, I might even argue that in the canon of motion pictures, in the canon of documentary films, you know, let this be added to the library of films, a catalog of films out there. Certainly they're getting inundated, if you want to talk about propaganda, every day by ads, magazines, billboards, radio, you know, that's selling, that's hawking these products, to use that term, so that one film comes forth with sort of the animal's point of view, if you will. And I thought, well, he'd come up with his reasons why. But, you know, he was wrong because, as you said, the film did communicate. It had a slow gestation process. It took about 2 years, but then it began to just take off around the world, which surprised us. And so I was so encouraged by humanity. And even since, 20 years later, that it's still, I'm like, people, you know what's interesting is that, I don't know how you do a poll of this or take some kind of poll of this, but if you were to ask people on the street, and I mean anywhere, your part of the world, here, anywhere, what they think of animal cruelty. And I mean like 95% of people, apart from really weirdos, would think it is not okay. Absolutely not okay. No one, name an issue, a political issue, any issue you can think of, where you get 95% agreement with people. You don't get it. So, I mean, it is deviant brilliance that the meat and dairy industry has pulled off something that 95% of people are essentially addicted to. They wouldn't call it addiction, but it is an addiction. There is no two ways about it. Because if I told you I'm taking your cheese away, someone might be like, wait. Now, I used this example before, like if I said, well, you can never have Brussels sprouts again for the rest of your life. I mean, they might not lose any sleep over that one.
Yeah.
So, but if they say you're taking my dairy away or my meat away, it's almost like taking cigarettes away or alcohol from an alcoholic. So clearly there's an addiction. And so they've pulled off this, 95% of people are addicted to these products, and 95% of people think animal cruelty is unacceptable and they don't want to see it. There are laws in this country, I'm not sure about your part of the world, where it's illegal to document what goes on inside. Deviant brilliance, really. That's the only term I can think of.
Yeah.
Deviant brilliance.
Yeah, it applies also to they're using the same playbook as the tobacco industry.
Yeah.
It's very similar, again, deviant brilliance. And there are ways to obfuscate the truth, to keep encouraging people. I mean, and the thing is, it's easy to encourage people to keep smoking when they're already addicted. This is the thing, and it's the same as with animal products, you know, it's one of the, deviant brilliance, it's almost easy for them, even though they do it in a very brilliant way. It is easy for them. It would be much more difficult for them if people weren't addicted to them already. We'd have a lot more success, I think, as animal advocates, if people didn't have that addiction to animal products.
Well, they're so clever. The royal they, that they've sold dairy. Let's talk about dairy for a moment. Which I don't know what the statistic is. Half the planet might be lactose intolerant, give or take, whatever that number is. I mean, that's 1 in 2. That is a big number. And still, people, if their doctor tells them, you need to drink 3 glasses of milk a day to get strong bones, they'll do it even if it gives them an upset stomach. I mean, that is extraordinary. Extraordinary that it just shows how ingrained it is. I interviewed once a truck driver. We haven't released this yet because it's going to be part of something, and I had an opportunity to film something, and it didn't fit in anything, but it's almost like a news story. You go document, you capture it, because it's happening. And I had a chance to sit in he called himself a hog hauler.
Right.
Because he transports pigs. And I got to do a ride along with him, basically. He let me. He was quitting. He hated his job. He's a trucker. He was going to go do natural gas or something else. I forget. He was going to go. Him and his brother had a business. They were going to go do. They didn't want to do it, but maybe they needed to work. They had families to feed, and they drive a truck, and so he did this. And he let me on his last week or so, just come on a ride along. He goes, "You want to see? You want to see?" And somehow we connected, and I got to get in his cab, put on a baseball hat, go into a facility, load it up with pigs, and drive it to the slaughterhouse, and interview him on the process. And one of the things he said that really struck me was, he goes, this blows my mind. He says, I think it's easier to get people to change their religion than change their diet. And I thought,
It's bold.
oh man, we're screwed. Like, because changing your religion is not very easy to get people to do. So changing diet, that's how ingrained it is. But there's really never been a movement like it, though, if you think of it. Because, and I may have said this to you before too, but it's a movement that stops and starts at the taste buds, really at the lips. It stops and starts here. And you know, Gandhi couldn't have defeated the British Empire with a menu. We couldn't have destroyed Nazi Germany or World War II with a menu. The fact that if you can get people to change their diet. Now, statistically, 12 plants and 5 animals feed about 80% of humanity. 12 plants and 5 animals roughly feed 80% of the world, and there's millions of plants on this earth. So think of it now, if you look at alternative milks, this has merit. This is critical. Alternative milks, which is nut and plant-based milks. By my last count, 17 that I'm aware of. 17 different plant and nut-based milks out there on the market, doing well. What's interesting about this is important. What's interesting about this is that when someone chooses to drink an alternative plant or nut milk, they're not comparing it to cow's milk. If you like oat or coconut or almond or whatever your preference is, it's just a taste preference. Cashew, whatever, have at it. You could look at the milk section the same way as a potato chip aisle, where there's rows of chips, all kinds of brands and flavors, to take your pick. So there's a lot of milks. There's not as many as potato chips, but there's a lot of choices. The significant part isn't the options. The significant part is that it doesn't have to taste like cow milk. I can't stress this enough, because from the inception of an idea to adoption of an idea, in between they call it the valley of death, because they don't know if a product or a company will succeed to adoption. Okay, alternative proteins, you know, plant-based meats, for instance, is still crossing the valley of death right now. Inception, yes. Adoption, by a small percentage. And there's great companies out there, innovative. I call these guys masters of creation, who are coming up with these. Like, we just had lunch today, and it was fava beans, and it was made into like kind of a steak. Incredible. Alternative proteins has not yet achieved what alternative milks have. Because if you're going to eat alternative protein, it better taste like cows, chickens, or pigs. Which means those 12 plants or 5, it got to take like those 5 animals. It has not yet transcended that. The milks have. The milk you drink doesn't have to taste like cow milk anymore. I'm encouraged by this because it tells me it's possible. If we did it with the milks, and a lot of people drink milk, we can do it with alternative protein. And when we do, and here's a prediction I'll make, 5, 10, I don't know how many years, might be longer, we haven't even tasted the menu of the future yet. We haven't even tasted the menu. Our children and grandchildren will be like, you guys used to eat 12 plants and 5 animals? That was the menu, and all of its variations, with all of its seasonings and all of its cultural influences, still these few ingredients and millions of combinations. When we do with alternative proteins, with what we've done with milks, there will be a brand new menu we've never even experienced. We don't even know what the food in the future tastes like. That to me is so exciting. But we're still bracketed with protein by it better taste like what we know. But the milks show us we can transcend that.
Definitely. It reminds me a little bit of how the oil and gas limits all of the technology and, you know, all the alternative energy technologies. It's sort of what the animal agriculture is doing with food. They're able to, I don't know how much sabotage they really do, but I think there's quite a lot of it with new technology.
Sure.
You know, I'm sure they're getting their fingers in lots of places.
They slowed it down.
Yeah, right.
And their point of attack I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Yeah, it's okay. No, I'm clearing my throat because my throat's so numb. Because there wasn't like a signal.
Well, I didn't mean to interrupt. But I have to say, their point of attack was process. It's processed, which is crazy. Because this is the industry that came up with processed meat.
Right.
Bacon, bologna, sausage, hot dog. I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You coined the term processed meat. You sell it to school kids in their Lunchables or whatever daily. And the point of attack is alternative proteins is too processed, and it's working.
Yeah, for sure.
People freak out.
For sure, it's the main one.
It's crazy.
It's chemicals and processed, and
it's illogical.
People say.
Okay, all right. The Martin Luther King, the arc of human history is long, but it bends toward justice. Okay, but it's long, criminally long sometimes, glacier paced at times. But look, when the automotive industry came out with automatic versus stick, bunch of people were like, automatic? I gotta drive a stick, all this stick. They fought it and fought it and fought it and fought it. And then when they drove an automatic, they never went back. Okay, electric cars, very similar, a little push and pull. And they've been around. First electric car in the 90s, right, coming out, right? They've been around. Getting better and better and better. So it's a different innovation. Same as the stick versus the automatic, and there's resistance to it. And once people try it, and once the charging gets faster, there's chargers in China right now that can charge your car in 5 minutes. That's a stop at a gas station.
Yeah.
I just did a fast charge coming from Palm Springs back up to Los Angeles, and it took a half an hour. We went into a store for a minute, and it fully charged. I have a electric Hummer, and so. Because it's a bit of a truck and I can carry gear, frankly, and I can schlep some equipment around in it. So cool. I did it in a half an hour, but they have them down to 5 minutes. So it's getting better. Same with wind and solar over petroleum. My iPhone is not a fake Nokia. It's a better product. No disrespect to Nokia, but prior to 2007, prior to the smartphone, it's a better product. So, but people are so slow to try these new things, and so companies that do alternative proteins have to just weather this valley of death storm, as it were, and keep going because the menu of the future is waiting, and it'll be delicious. It'll be so good. It'll blow our minds, but people are stubbornly resistant to change.
Yeah, and on top of that also there is the indirect, which we've already discussed, kind of sabotage that they do, and also what I was curious to consider for a second is I wonder how much direct sabotage there is, as in, it depends on how you define sabotage, but obviously them releasing manipulative lies is sabotage, but I wonder how many of them are from the meat industry are infiltrating within these businesses and leaking information and looking for the weak points and maybe doing bad things on purpose, things like that,
It comes around, fortunately, because the tobacco industry that you mentioned is a good example, because I forget when they put the Surgeon General warning here. I don't know about in Europe, but the warning on cigarettes, the packet with the warning that it causes cancer. Here, Dr. Michael Greger covers this in his talks, in his books too, but it took 7,000 medical studies. 7,000. Let's just let that resonate for a second. 7,000 medical studies proving this causes cancer before they put a warning.
Yeah.
7,000. They didn't give us a heads up after 6,000. They didn't give us a heads up after 600. But 7,000, that's a powerful industry and a powerful lobby. But once it happened, and it did, since it happened, I don't know, late 70s maybe, I forget when it went up, early 1980s, I forget when. Smoking has dropped now by half. Okay, so how do we weather half a century, if that's what it takes, or 2 generations, for a new idea to take hold? And how do we not destroy our planet in the interim? Hopefully we won't destroy it that quickly, but we are getting to a point, if you look at climate change, where they talk about tipping points and things where if something isn't done now, it will affect, our grandchildren. So, yeah, we have to keep being gardeners and casting seeds. That's as simple as that. I go back to that metaphor.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you talk about half a century. I mean, with it being 20 years since Earthlings came out, and with the impact that that's had over the last 20 years, I mean, thinking back from when it came out to now, what do you think has been the biggest change, and do you think Earthlings was part of that change, like in your experience, because you've been involved in the, you're not just a random filmmaker. You've been heavily involved in this movement and animal advocacy for all of those 20 years, right? So.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a collective. Books, music, films, animal welfare organizations, animal rights groups, advocacy groups, sanctuaries, conferences. It's a collective. I'll tell you. Look, I have to give Moby, the musician, props, because I bought a CD in the 90s at a record store in San Diego. I bought his first album. Everything Is Wrong. That's what the album was called, Moby's first album. And I bought it in the 90s, and the CD, and there were liner notes on the little flap inside. And if you looked at it, Moby put all these statistics, these little notes about, and the first I ever heard about, this was before I dated that vegetarian girlfriend, was reading liner notes in an electronic pop musician's CD. So like the flyer that your friend, Moby put that there, and I found it and saw it and read it and had it. It laid some bit of a framework. Then later I met somebody, and a woman who cooked this way, and then later saw a documentary. So they can't stop it because people are basically decent. We read about the exceptions every day in the news, but people are basically decent, and they want to live healthier lives. They want their kids to have healthy lives. They don't like to see animals suffer. So whether Earthlings probably indirectly, I would say, I can't take any credit, but it just was another tool in the toolbox that people would hopefully stumble upon. I mean, that's why we just got to keep putting. I'm not good at writing books or starting a sanctuary or an animal rights group or a business like an alternative protein. It's not my interest. My interest is film. So I'll do that. But I think we're evenly placed. If there's enough of us doing this, then bit by bit we'll get there.
Definitely.
That might sound a little altruistic, but I hope.
No, I think it's hopeful. I think it's good to have hope. I think, especially with people who care about animals, there's not a lot of hope. I mean, we look at the world, and we look at films like Earthlings and like Dominion, and it seems hopeless, right? But it is important to have hope, and even though those films are obviously extremely difficult to see, and they're bringing out the worst humanity has to offer, they also bring out some of the best humanity has to offer because of the impact they have, And so there is definitely hope we need hope.
But can I comment?
Yeah, please.
There's been progress in the 20 years. You just made me think of an example, as you know, because recently I had this injury where I was bit by a rattlesnake and I had to go to the hospital, and I was in the ER. I was in the hospital for 2 days. I told them, in terms of meals, I didn't have any appetite the first day, that I was vegan. And I put a little apple as a symbol on my monitor to let staff know this guy's totally vegan. And I kid you not, they brought me a completely vegan meal. They had Beyond Meat in there, they had Just Egg.
What?
In a hospital. And I don't think not too long ago you'd have an option. You'd be eating a salad or an apple, which is what I expected, and I would have been fine. Someone would have brought me a power bar or whatever. No, they had it in the hospital. This is progress, incremental progress. So yeah, I've seen steps. In terms of, has there been a change at the factory farm level? I'm not so sure. When I worked on Dominion, I was a co-producer on that film. They sent me that footage. First time I was looking at footage in 2017. So this is 12 years after Earthlings. 15 really, because I worked on them for 5. Earthlings is in standard definition. Dominion's in high definition. And I was depressed because the footage looked the same. It was just one was high def and one was standard def. But it was basically fundamentally the same. I'm like, we've done nothing. nothing's changed. In the factory farm system, the process is the same, and I was deeply discouraged. Not true though, because in the restaurants and stuff, or my example in the hospital, you're seeing these options available. So sometimes things are, happen simultaneously. This doesn't seem to be progressing, but something is really going well over here, and then there'll be an equilibrium.
Yeah, it's a monster, factory farming. It's a beast, and
it's a machine.
It's just, it's almost. I mean, the word unstoppable isn't correct because we can stop it, but it's almost unstoppable. It's going to take a lot for us to stop it. But I think if we, especially factory farming, if we single out factory farming, I think it's a low-hanging fruit, because I think most people that we come across, especially in the West, they oppose it. They actually don't like it, even though they support it every single day. But at least philosophically, they disagree with it, right? They'll tell you morally, I do not agree with it. So there is opportunity there, to change it. But I guess we've got to rally behind that cry, really, as a movement, as everyone, not just the animal rights and animal advocacy movement, but all of society has to rally behind that cry of stop factory farming. Otherwise, it's just never going to change as long as they keep making money, right? It's profitable. It's still profitable today with subsidies, especially.
Well, but it's kind of like because I studied this for a film. It was about disruption in the market. It was about disruption, and here's an encouraging thought from what you said about factory farming. Most major disruptions to industries happened while they were doing very well. Very well. Very, very well. Kodak was doing exceptionally well when Kodak developed digital imagery, and later, within 10 or 12 years, it was filing for bankruptcy. Obviously, Blockbuster was doing very well when they passed on the opportunity to buy Netflix.
Good point. Nokia as well, you just mentioned.
What's that?
Nokia, the phone brand.
Yeah,
they were
Nokia.
The biggest.
Nokia, literally up to 2007, they were on the cover of Forbes magazine, Who Will Top the Cell Phone King, 100 million members. And that is the year that a little thing called the iPhone and the Android, they both came out in 07, were released. So disruptions occur when an industry is doing very well. In fact, the reason that those industries fail is because they brush aside these threats. I always say, like, the film was going to begin with this line that the Stone Age didn't end because we ran out of stones. Right. Stone Age ended because bronze became a better way to make tools. So there's plenty of stones laying around. So what might happen, and again it comes back to the taste buds, the lips, this movement that stops and starts right here, is that factory farming could suddenly go away because to make a cheeseburger using Impossible or Beyond or any other worthy competitor out there is 25-fold less land, 10-fold less water, 10-fold less agrochemicals, 10-fold less labor, no animal cruelty, no industrial pollutants, no salmonella, no fecal matter, no E. coli. And so once someone says, well, hang on a second, I don't need a burger 3 times a day. Of course I need to eat my fruits and vegetables, my legumes, I gotta eat healthy. But if I'm gonna have a burger, try a plant-based burger, because it'll help the environment. And this tipping point will happen while factory farming is doing very well, and then it'll be like a domino effect. And that isn't me making some random prediction. That is every disruption that's happened in the past. The day that Gutenheim invented the printing press, I think mid-1400s, 14, right, something, whatever.
Right.
On that day, he printed a Bible. First thing the printing press ever printed was a Bible. And on that day, his Bible was 10 times cheaper than any manuscript Bible. That's a disruption to the manuscript Bible industry. It was an innovation. It was a new innovation. When they can produce more food, better quality, faster, with more variation, with no industrial pollutants, it's going to be a run for money. Consumer Report did a study on 300 randomized trials in the United States, from high-end steakhouses to Costco, Kroger, fast food, everything in between. 300 to sample how much fecal matter was in those. And guess how much it was? 100%. Every single sample, from the fancy, bougie, snobby steakhouse to the littlest fast food joint, had fecal aerosol, that shit in the air. Why? Because your food starts in a slaughterhouse, which is part bathroom. It's part kitchen, part toilet, right? Because everything's coming out in the same place. So that's pretty gross, that people know that if you're buying anything from anywhere, just because you spend more money on it doesn't mean it's not fecal matter. That's gone from alternative proteins. That doesn't exist anymore. That's out the window. So once people begin to try this stuff, and they know they shouldn't be eating it that much anyway, you shouldn't be eating this stuff every day. You got to eat more fruits and vegetables. You have to, because I've interviewed, doctors, physicians, cardiologists. Number one cause of death among cardiologists is heart disease. That is staggering. That'd be like the number one cause of death among dentists is gum disease. Yeah. For God's sake, I mean, how is this possible? So it's going to happen. It's going to hit a tipping point, and it's going to be a disruption. And then people will lose jobs, like they do, but it also creates jobs. And it'll be fantastic. We'll have a new menu. Animal cruelty will stop, and there will be new industries to feed the world. Oh, let me comment on feeding the world, because it is weird that 80 billion animals, roughly 80 billion, 8 billion humans consume 80 billion animals, 8 to 80, 10 to 1 or so ratio here. Some of these animals are quite large. Cows and pigs, they consume a lot of food. My question for you is, how is it we can feed 80 billion animals and we can't feed 1 billion people? Something's very wrong with this math. We do not have a food problem. Why are people starving? The World Health Organization did a study not too long ago, a year or two ago, that 500 million people are at the door of starvation. Why are they starving if we can feed 80 billion animals a year? Now, 80 billion animals, are they on the earth all at the same time? Well, no, some are getting born or some are getting slaughtered, but we're still feeding annually in 12 months 80 billion animals. Doesn't include seafood, by the way. We don't feed seafood unless we're farming. So we don't have a food problem. And it's insufficient model. You probably know this. It's about a 16 to 1 ratio, right? 16 pounds of grain goes in, 1 pound of feedlot beef comes out. If you took 16 grand to the bank and they gave you back 1 grand, you would be pretty upset. You might ask that bank for a subsidy of some kind to help offset what you lost, which is what they do to the government, right? It's subsidized, which the plant-based and alternative proteins are not getting, which is why they can't compete with the price. You can't go to get a $2 burger from them, so they don't make it easy. But it's broken. It's a broken model. It can't continue. As long as they want to, it can. It can't. The same as the petroleum and the oil industry. It can't continue. We can't keep burning dead animals and plants forever. It's just that people are stubborn because they want money, and they really don't care about the future. But it's happening. If we can survive the technological phase of our evolution. Carl Sagan said this once, if he could interview an alien. He didn't believe in aliens because he's a scientist, but he said if there was an alien, I'd ask him one question, him or her or it, one question, which is, how did you survive the technological phase of your evolution? When you got to a point when it was no longer horse and buggy, or you were walking on foot, or your horizon was the edge of the world, horizons were the limit, because you're on foot, so that mountain over there, you're not ever going to get past that in your lifetime. As innovations and technology began to grow, we began to electrify our cities. Now the technological phase of our evolution begins. We've been into it since at least the Industrial Revolution, at least 200, 250 years. How do you not destroy yourselves or your planet during the technological phase of your evolution?
I have one more question for you.
Yeah.
Before we get to that one more question, where can people find you and what can they expect? What have you got coming up? Anything interesting?
Well, I don't do much social media, which isn't a good idea. I need to be better at that, because they can go to earthlings.com and they can see some stuff we've done. But yeah, because I'm sort of quiet about stuff and secretive about stuff. Just because I'm not sure where it's going to go. But I can tell you 2 things. We do have a film coming out end of the year, which is based on Michael Greger's book, How Not to Die, Dr. Greger's book, How Not to Die. It's essentially just chapter 1 of his book, which is heart disease, which is our #1 killer. So we never really get past chapter 1 because it's the #1 killer, but it can be reversible, so it's hopeful. And it's funny, and spent 3 years on it, following Dr. Greger around, giving all these talks and piecing together this. And so it's really, really, really clever and interesting. I'm not sure where it'll end up yet, but I just finished it. And so How Not to Die, the film is coming out end of this year. And then I've got, this new film I'm shooting. We start June 16th. This is not a documentary. It's a narrative. And I'm trying to think of how much I should say about this. It's a true story. I'm not sure what I can say. Let me set it up a little bit. I'll tantalize just a tad.
Okay.
I'm excited about it because it's about a man who was in a gang, and he was a drug dealer, and he went to prison, and he had an epiphany in prison to purge his life of all violence, including what he ate. True story. And without reading a book or seeing a film or anything, he just somehow saw his life doing drugs, his life as a gang member, and even what he ate. Somehow in his mind he correlated all of it's violent. And he just wanted nothing to do with it. And this happened to him while he was in solitary confinement.
Right.
So the idea of so I've known this individual for many years, and I've interviewed him. And when it came time to tell his story, not as a documentary, but as a drama, it's a beautiful story, and I can't wait to shoot it, and then cut it, and weave it together, because it's a real transformation story. But you don't really see it in Act 1 and 2. It comes out in Act 3. So.
It sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Definitely excited for that.
So.
Yeah.
You'll know more by the end of the year.
Yeah.
There'll be more information on it. But for now, there's the tease.
So my last question for you, and actually I came up with this question while we were talking, because I feel like it's just the theme of this whole interview has been very clearly one thing. How are you staying? Let me rephrase this. How do you stay so hopeful after all this time, after all this work, after all the things you've seen, and making that film and working on Dominion, because you just, it's the word exhume hope. Is like it just comes out of you. You seem to have such big ideas and just so much hope for the future. So how are you doing this?
Well, okay, sure, it can be discouraging, because it's we call it traumatic knowledge. To see these kind of things, to witness things as traumatic knowledge, it causes a trauma. To witness bloodletting and killing, another example why you're not carnivorous. The lion has no problem ripping something to shred with bone and giblets and fecal and junk bursting out. You're even wincing as I'm telling you this. You're not a carnivore. If you were a carnivore, you'd be salivating at this stuff. I mean, it could lay in the dirt. Maggots can start to crawl in it. They come right back.
The smell brings them in.
They dig in.
The rotting is what brings, like, for example, hyenas, for example, they come through the rot. They smell it, they sniff it out. Vultures too. So we're not carnivores. Clearly, the slaughterhouses are hidden, everything. We don't want to see it. It should be in the store, clean. Any grocery store is really bright, like super well lit. The produce, everything is just like, that's about as. And if there's any blood or on it, we freak. So we're not carnivores. It's just absurd. People say I'm a carnivore. I'm like, you're not a carnivore, dude. I could pop up one video on my phone right now, and you'd be like, ah. Okay, how do you stay hopeful? Because people get discouraged when they see this and they're exposed to it as traumatic knowledge. I've always thought of it as you got to filter it. You got to be like a water filter. Like, the junk comes in, but you got to filter it. You don't have to hold it. You don't have to resonate in it. Don't obsess about yourself, for God's sake. You're here to deliver. Well, I don't know. I'm not saying you're only here for that reason, but this part of it is to share a message that you have correlated, you have connected. And I also look at children or animals, for any of us who have companion animals at home, or children. I have 2 kids, and the awesome thing about kids is how hopeful and how magical they see the world. So people get discouraged, and I say, no, the next generation is totally hopeful and optimistic and positive, and we are seeing change. Listen, 2,000 years ago, I'll be brief,
2,000 years ago, as written in the Bible, let's say this for example, Jesus was crucified. He was not the first person to be crucified. Romans crucified people. They weren't the only ones. As you walk toward the gates of Rome, people could be lined up being crucified on the path, or heads were on spikes. Okay, so we're in Los Angeles. We're right now, this interview is being, we're right by LA, right by the airport. Okay, so imagine if you were driving to the airport here, and all these people were being crucified along Century Boulevard, or heads on spikes, which was Los Angeles' way of saying, don't mess with us. That's what Rome was saying.
Just be like the, was it Escape from LA? Is that the movie where it's like that dystopian future?
Yeah, in the future, it's a bit like that. That would be sort of a regression.
Yeah.
We don't do that anymore. I'm not saying humanity is far from perfect, but we have evolved beyond that level of consciousness. There's not public executions. There are some in some parts of the world still, but that used to be very common. Here, public hangings 100 years ago, I don't know, maybe less. We've evolved beyond it. That is, as to quote Martin Luther King again, the arc of human history is long, but bends toward justice. We are evolving. We don't do that anymore. Okay, and it'd be interesting to see where we are in another 2,000 years, how much further we come. So I am optimistic. I see no benefit in being pessimistic and negative. If you told me being pessimistic and negative worked, let's do it. Go for it.
Right.
It doesn't work, it brings you down, it drains your battery, it makes you less effective. Be the light, you know, radiate, you know, it's like watching the Olympics. You ever watch the Olympics? It's so inspiring. These people can do with their bodies. I can't do it, but there's a human doing it. He's not an alien, he or she. It's remarkable, it's inspiring. Okay, inspire. Inspire. Curiously, the movement has attracted a lot of wounded people who happen to be sensitive to this. That's very interesting. They are sensitive to it, but many of them are also wounded. They don't know how to process it. The movement tends to attract more women than men. Women are just more conscious. Men are very conscious, but there seems to be this bravado or this ego that's stronger that seems to diminish anything that looks too compassionate or sensitive. So, but yeah, I'm optimistic. I look at kids and they're just amazing. I heard a story once, I'll end on this. It was Paul Watson, who was one of the original Greenpeace members and later Sea Shepherd, and now has his own organization. He's been around a long time. I've known Paul many years, and I remember reading about him once long ago where he was a boy, maybe in Newfoundland, snorkeling, and there were all these fish. First time snorkeling, a little kid comes up with a snorkel and just like, wow. And if you've ever been scuba diving or snorkeling, it's pretty remarkable down there. And many decades later, he took his young son, because he had another son later in life. He has an older daughter, I believe, but he has a younger son, and took him, as I remember hearing the story, snorkeling. And when he went to that same spot, there wasn't half as many fish as when he was a boy, and he came up almost tearful at the loss of biodiversity, of life. And his son comes up out of the water, and guess what he says? Dad, did you see all the fish? Same reaction 50 years apart. This Earth has had 5 major extinctions that we know of, where between 75 and 96% of life was destroyed on it before we ever came along, a mere 2 million years ago, for those who believe that, as opposed to creationism. This life bounces back. Despite all our doomsday prophecies and all of our wars, and mankind has been at war 95% of recorded civilization. That's a huge number, by the way. Humankind has been at war for 95% of recorded civilization. We can't seem to stop killing each other. And yet we have not destroyed life on this planet. There's no reason not to be hopeful.